Hi, I'm Wes Harville with Shawnee Hills Woodshop. Today I want to show you how I built my pocket hole machine. I've had several pocket hole jigs over the years and I really like using pocket holes. The problem I don't like is the rounded holes they leave that are always rough and just don't look that good and are also hard to plug. So let me show you how this thing works. Nice clean pocket holes, especially when you compare it to the pocket holes that I've drilled here using a regular Kreg jig. When I started building the pocket hole machine, I didn't really have a plan. I'd made a few sketches of how I thought it would work, but I just really wasn't sure. So for the most part, I just kind of figured it out as I went. Also, since I wasn't really sure if it was going to work, I decided to buy a cheap router and angle drill from Harbor Freight. Don't typically like to buy power tools from Harbor Freight, but I didn't want to spend a couple $100s on quality tools and then find out that either it didn't work or I wasn't happy with it. So for right now, they've been working, and if they ever mess up, or I guess I should say when they mess up, I'll replace them with a higher quality brand. So here I'm basically just making a clamp to hold the router in place. That's kind of where I started. I figured I could build around from there. So I just traced the outline of the router on a piece of plywood and then cut it out on the bandsaw. I had to make notches for bolts to go through because I didn't have bolt long enough to fit all the way through the piece of plywood that I had cut, and I was too cheap to go buy new ones. The piece that I'm gluing on right now was probably the most important piece of the entire build, because you want the router bit, when it's all the way raised, to be the exact depth of the head of the screw, and you want the pocket that it cuts to be a certain length to make a 15-degree angle in. And so it took a lot of math and a lot of drawing and laying out to figure out exactly where that pivot point needed to be. I stuck these on with some CA glue, which is really nice when you're trying to build fast, but I wanted to go back behind and add some screws just to add a little bit of strength, because I do want to use this. And so here's the router all clamped up, and I'll just tighten these bolts and it's not going to go anywhere. Here I'm just drilling out the hole for a bolt to go through that'll be my actual pivot point. And then just to make sure that the legs stay spaced evenly, I decided to add another block there and glue it in. I had a piece of countertop laying around and I thought it'd make a good top, so I cut a piece off of it and then undercut the laminate 3/4 of an inch or a 1/2 inch on either side, just so I could glue in a piece of oak on either side and not have bare particle board exposed. Then I'll take it to the router table and add a chamfer. And it won't be perfect, but it'll be better than raw particle board. I decided to put washers in between the sides and the pivoting point just to make sure that it wasn't rubbing wood on wood. And I used 2 washers, that way the washers were rubbing against each other and not against the wood. I wish my pocket hole machine was already done so I could drill these pocket holes with it, but I guess I'll just have to stick with the Kreg jig for now. Using the pocket holes I just drilled, I'm actually mounting the sub-assembly to the countertop. I'm having to take the router and slowly cut in the groove where the pocket will be. Cutting that particle board made an absolute mess, so I was glad I had a dust mask. I took a scrap piece of oak to use as the fence and screwed it on here. Using an old lever from a drill press that I had, I made a extension, and it's what I'm going to use for the lever to activate the router and the drill. I realized that the fence needed to be taller so I could mount the clamp that holds the workpiece down, as well as the back side of the cabinet will be taller than the work surface. So I glued up another piece of scrap oak and made it just a little bit taller. Although the weight of the router was enough to let gravity pull the router bit down, I added a spring there and a spring on the drill sled just to make sure that it automatically pulled back to a neutral position after each time. Then I added some sides out of some scrap cherry plywood I had and then closed it all and added a switch, and now it's all done. Works like a charm. Looks so much better than using a drill bit.